What if the most feared occult symbol in history was never about demons at all, but about a truth so powerful it had to be buried under centuries of lies? For generations, Baphomet has been branded as heresy, chained to the Inquisition, and painted as the devil himself. But the real story is far more dangerous. The truth hidden in Baphomet's forbidden Gnosis, the seal of power explained in obsessive detail, is that this figure was never just an idol. It was a map, a code of transformation that holds both liberation and destruction, depending on who dares to face it. Most people have it all wrong. They think Baphomet is only about rebellion, sin, or secret cults. But what if I told you that behind the horns, the torch, and the pentagram lies a blueprint for human potential? Knowledge so radical it terrified kings, priests, and empires. This is why Baphomet's seal was kept hidden in secret orders, whispered only to those prepared to pay the price. And now, piece by piece, we're going to uncover exactly why this forbidden Gnosis still echoes today, and what it means for you. Imagine the fear that spread through medieval Europe when whispers arose that the Knights Templar were worshipping an idol called Baphomet. In the dusty halls of the Inquisition, men in robes spoke of secret rites, of heads carved in stone, and of forbidden prayers muttered in the dark. But here's the thing, the real Baphomet meaning was never what the judges thought it was. To them, it was heresy, plain and simple. Yet to those accused, it was something else, an echo of a Baphomet occult symbol whose origins stretched far beyond Christendom. When we talk about Knights Templar Baphomet, we aren't just repeating an old story. We're touching the nerve of a deeper mystery, one that the world still isn't entirely ready to face. Think about it. How could the most disciplined military order of the Middle Ages suddenly be accused of bowing before a goat-headed idol? Doesn't it sound almost too absurd to be true? That's where the brilliance of history hides. Behind accusations that seem outrageous lies a truth that few dared to name. The Baphomet explained in the trials was distorted, yes, but distortion often hints at a dangerous reality. It wasn't about idolatry, it was about knowledge, Baphomet forbidden knowledge that could unravel the very foundation of authority. The Inquisition feared symbols because symbols carried power, and power in the wrong hands meant rebellion. When the Templars were dragged before the courts, many of them confessed under torture. Some said they had seen a bearded head. Others spoke of an idol shining with strange light. But if you've ever read the testimonies, you'll notice how inconsistent they are. That's no coincidence. The truth wasn't meant to be clear. Baphomet Gnosis was not about worshipping an object, but about understanding a reality hidden behind appearances. Like a riddle carved into stone, it required decoding. This is why the Baphomet esoteric meaning remains elusive even today. What the Inquisition called heresy might have been a blueprint for inner liberation. Picture a knight returning from the East, carrying not gold but ideas. He had seen the mosques of the Saracens, studied the stars under the desert sky, and perhaps learned from mystics who spoke of unity, duality, and the hidden architect of the cosmos. When he returned, he didn't bring relics. He brought Baphomet, occult secrets. And secrets, once planted, tend to grow. The very accusation that destroyed the Templars may have been born out of envy. Church authorities could not tolerate an order that held Gnosis outside their control. And so, the Baphomet seal of power became less a drawing and more a death sentence. If you've ever felt misunderstood for holding an idea that others weren't ready for, then you already know a fraction of what the Templars faced. To them, Baphomet explained wasn't about horns and hooves. It was about a current of thought that moved against the tide. In a way, it's like when someone discovers a book that changes their life. Say, The Kybalion, or The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. That was the danger of Baphomet forbidden knowledge. Once it entered the mind, it reshaped the soul, and those in power couldn't allow that reshaping. There's also a lesson here about projection. Often, what societies label as evil is simply what they can't control. By branding the Knights Templar Baphomet as demonic, the Inquisition turned a symbol of integration into a monster. Yet look closer, and you realize it was never about devils. It was about transformation. The head, the idol, the chained figure, all of it pointed to inner alchemy. It's not different from how Jung spoke of shadow integration centuries later. The Baphomet esoteric meaning was never static. It was dynamic, evolving, reshaping those who dared to touch it. So, when we look back at the image of Baphomet chained in the minds of the Templars' accusers, what do we really see? Not a monster, not an idol, but a veil, a cover placed over something too dangerous to name. The whispers, the torture, the secrecy, all of it hints that the Baphomet occult symbol was not destroyed but hidden, waiting for someone else to decode it. And this is exactly where the story takes an unexpected turn, because centuries later, a French occultist would bring that hidden shape into the light, giving flesh to what was once only rumor. In the 19th century, long after the flames of the Inquisition had burned out, a French occultist named Eliphas Lévy picked up the scattered whispers of the Knights Templar Baphomet and gave them form. He drew what would become one of the most recognizable images in all of esotericism, the winged androgynous figure with a torch between its horns. Many say he created it, but that's not entirely true. Lévy didn't invent, he revealed. His drawing was not a fabrication, but a translation of Baphomet Gnosis into ink and paper. In doing so, he crystallized the Baphomet occult symbol into flesh for the modern world to see. What makes Lévy's contribution so striking is that it was both shocking and clarifying. For centuries, Baphomet had been a rumor, a vague accusation, a blurred testimony from tortured men. With one image, Lévy gave it definition. The Baphomet explained by his hand wasn't a monstrous idol worshipped in secrecy, but a composite of spiritual truths. Goat and human, male and female, beast and angel, all fused into one. This was the Baphomet esoteric meaning, the reconciliation of opposites. And though the church had tried to bury it, Lévy placed it on the table like a mirror for anyone daring enough to look. Imagine being in Paris at the time, stumbling upon this strange engraving. It must have been like staring at something both terrifying and magnetic. The Eliphas Lévy Baphomet was not just a picture, it was a challenge. To the uninitiated, it looked like blasphemy. To the seeker, it whispered of Baphomet forbidden knowledge. Even today, when people share Lévy's drawing online, they rarely see it for what it is. They see controversy, they see shock value. But beneath the surface lies the map of a mystery, one that invites the brave to read between the horns, the wings and the torch. Lévy himself described Baphomet as the embodiment of equilibrium. Think about it. In a world torn between extremes, light and dark, spirit and matter, heaven and earth, here was a figure uniting all. Isn't that what so many of us crave? A center point where contradictions dissolve. When you meditate on the Baphomet seal of power that Lévy unveiled, you begin to understand why he insisted it wasn't demonic. It was initiatory. The drawing itself functions like a ritual. Just staring at it long enough can shift your perception, almost like a mirror forcing you to confront your own hidden dualities. Of course, the reaction was not all admiration. Critics branded Lévy's work as dangerous, as a revival of heresy. And in a way, they weren't wrong. Symbols don't need armies to overthrow paradigms. A single Baphomet occult symbol, once seeded in the mind, can undo centuries of rigid dogma. That's why Lévy's drawing caused discomfort then, and why it still does now. He didn't just draw a goat-headed figure. He tore open the veil and said, "Here is what you fear. Here is what you've hidden." To look at the Eliphaz, Levi Baphomet, is to look at yourself, stripped of excuses. You might wonder, why did Levi risk his reputation to present this? The answer lies in the nature of Gnosis. Knowledge that is kept locked away becomes poison. Knowledge that is shared becomes medicine. Levi understood that the Baphomet explained through imagery could reach the subconscious in ways words never could. It's like listening to music. You don't need to analyze every note to feel its power. In the same way, the Baphomet esoteric meaning works on the psyche silently, opening doors that logic alone cannot. He knew that once the image was released, it could never truly be contained again. And that's where the story turns fascinating. Because if Levi gave Baphomet its body, then what exactly was its soul? Was it simply a drawing, or was he tapping into an archetype that already existed, waiting to be unveiled? The Baphomet occult secrets he hinted at were not confined to his century. They reach backward into ancient mystery traditions and forward into the spiritual quests of today, which leads us to an even deeper layer of the enigma. What happens when we look past the surface of the drawing and confront the very mystery that lives at its heart, an androgynous truth beyond male and female? When most people see the Eliphaz Levi Baphomet, their eyes are first drawn to the strange balance of features. Breasts on a figure with a masculine face, wings that belong to no earthly creature, a body that refuses to be boxed into one identity. This is not accident. It's the Baphomet esoteric meaning revealed through form. The image whispers of an ancient truth, that no human being is purely one thing. Masculine and feminine, strength and gentleness, reason and intuition, these live inside us all. The Baphomet occult symbol doesn't mock this paradox, it celebrates it. And in doing so, it unsettles those who cling desperately to rigid definitions. Think about how society has always tried to split reality in two, good and evil, sacred and profane, male and female. But what happens when you realize the line is an illusion? That's where Baphomet forbidden knowledge comes in. The androgyny of Baphomet isn't about gender alone, it's about wholeness. Imagine if you stopped seeing your contradictions as flaws and started seeing them as pieces of a larger harmony. That's the Baphomet explained in living color. It says, you're not broken for carrying dualities, you're complete because of them. And that changes the way you look at yourself entirely. There's a reason why mystics across cultures honored the union of opposites. Taoist philosophy speaks of yin and yang, inseparable yet distinct. Alchemists wrote of the rebis, a being who embodied both sexes as a symbol of perfection. In Christianity, even Christ was described as embodying both lamb and lion. So when the Knights Templar Baphomet carried whispers of this figure, it wasn't about worshipping a goat. It was about recognizing the hidden law of integration. The Baphomet meaning aligns with this, an archetype teaching that wholeness comes not from denying opposites, but from uniting them. Now, let's bring this down to something you can actually use in daily life. Have you ever felt torn between two choices? Logic pulling one way, intuition pulling the other. That's a moment where the Baphomet Gnosis becomes practical. Instead of choosing sides, ask how both can serve a higher balance. For example, in making a business decision, logic might show you the numbers, but intuition whispers about timing. Trusting both often brings results that neither alone could give. This is what the Baphomet occult secrets look like when applied. A strategy that integrates rather than divides. Of course, embracing this balance isn't easy. Society pushes us to pick labels, to choose teams, to fit into neat little boxes. But every time you allow yourself to embody duality, compassion with discipline, strength with vulnerability, you activate the Baphomet seal of power within. It's not mystical in the Hollywood sense. It's mystical in the human sense. You stop being at war with yourself, and when that happens, you carry a kind of magnetism that others can't quite explain. It's the same magnetism that made the Eliphaz Levi Baphomet unforgettable, a figure that looks both familiar and alien, pulling you in because it mirrors the unspoken parts of your own soul. There's also a hidden danger in ignoring this lesson. When we repress one side of ourselves, it doesn't disappear, it mutates. Deny your sensitivity, and it returns as cruelty. Deny your strength, and it returns as weakness disguised as dependence. This is why the Baphomet explained as androgyny matters so much. It's not a strange artistic choice, it's survival knowledge for the psyche. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge warns us. Balance ignored becomes shadow, and shadow left unchecked rules us from the dark, far more than any idol ever could. So as we gaze at this androgynous figure, we're not just looking at a piece of art. We're staring into a mirror of what we might become if we dare to integrate. The Baphomet esoteric meaning doesn't end at gender. It stretches into every realm of life. Relationships, creativity, even spirituality itself. And just above that enigmatic face, between the horns, burns a flame that doesn't merely illuminate, it awakens. But what exactly is that fire, and why did Levi place it at the very crown of Baphomet? That's the next step in the mystery. At the very top of the Eliphaz, Levi Baphomet burns a torch, resting between its horns. Most who glance at it think it's just decoration, but those who look deeper know better. That flame is not ordinary fire. It's the serpent flame, the symbol of awakened consciousness. The Baphomet meaning here reaches its most dangerous point, because fire has always been a double-edged gift. It can warm and illuminate, or it can scorch and consume. The Baphomet occult symbol shows us this paradox openly. Knowledge is power, but power mishandled becomes destruction. And that is why this image remains both feared and revered. Think of Prometheus, stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. He was punished not because of the gift, but because he broke the boundary between divine and mortal. The Baphomet explained through the torch carries the same warning. To awaken the flame of Gnosis is to trespass into forbidden territory. This is why the church called it heresy. Baphomet, forbidden knowledge, meant light stolen from the heavens. Fire placed into the hands of mortals who might not be ready. But isn't that the story of progress itself? Every discovery, from electricity to the atom, dangerous until it's mastered. The serpent flame between the horns is also a reminder of the Kundalini fire spoken of in Eastern traditions. Yogis described it as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine, rising upward when awakened. Doesn't that sound eerily similar? Baphomet Gnosis bridges east and west, revealing truths hidden under different names. Just as Kundalini rises to crown consciousness, the torch atop Baphomet blazes with the power of illumination. The Baphomet esoteric meaning suggests that enlightenment isn't granted from outside, it's ignited from within. And once that flame lights up, you can never go back to darkness the same way again. Now, imagine this in practical terms. Think of a moment when you finally understood something that had puzzled you for years. Maybe it was about love, money, or even your own habits. That sudden aha moment. That's the serpent flame in miniature. It burns away ignorance and lights up clarity. The Baphomet occult secrets aren't abstract. They're woven into the way we grow as humans. Every breakthrough, whether in science, art, or personal life, is a spark of that flame. It's not about worshipping fire, it's about realizing that the torch is already inside you, waiting to be lit. But there's a reason why this torch sits between the horns of a goat. Horns have always symbolized power, will, and even danger. Placing the flame there is no accident. It tells us that the fire of consciousness is always framed by raw instinct. To master the Baphomet seal of power, you can't just chase enlightenment while ignoring your primal self. You must integrate both. Otherwise, the flame blinds instead of guiding. This is the wisdom hidden in the Knights Templar Baphomet, a reminder that true power is balance between reason and instinct, spirit and flesh, light and shadow. Of course, such balance is fragile. History shows us countless examples of flames gone wrong, leaders drunk on knowledge but lacking wisdom, scientists unlocking energy without considering its consequences. The Baphomet explained through the torch warns of this. Fire between the horns is potential, not guarantee. It demands responsibility. Baphomet forbidden knowledge tempts with shortcuts, but without discipline, it consumes the very seeker who lit it. That's why traditions across the world insist on preparation before initiation, because Gnosis without grounding is a recipe for ruin. And yet, the flame still calls to us. It promises that there's more to life than routine, more to reality than appearances. The Baphomet esoteric meaning in this torch whispers of awakening, of daring to see with eyes unclouded by fear. But once the fire awakens, where does it spread? Does it remain a guiding light, or does it reshape the very body it burns within? The engraving of Baphomet answers this not with words, but with geometry, the living seal inscribed on its chest, the pentagram of flesh itself. At the very center of the Eliphaz Levi Baphomet rests a pentagram, inscribed upon its chest. Most see it as just another occult decoration, but that's because they've never been taught to read geometry as language. The Baphomet, meaning here, is not abstract, it is carved into flesh. The pentagram, five-pointed and radiant, has always symbolized harmony, the head and four limbs of man, the elements of nature, the balance of spirit. To wear it upon the body is to declare that the human itself is a temple. The Baphomet occult symbol reminds us the universe is written in shapes, and we carry those shapes within. For centuries, the pentagram was seen as sacred. Pythagoras called it the symbol of health and cosmic order. Early Christians even used it to represent the 5 wounds of Christ. Only later was it twisted into a mark of heresy. The Baphomet explained through this geometry reveals an ancient truth. Every culture at some point knew the star as a doorway to understanding. To place it on Baphomet's chest is to inscribe the cosmos onto the body itself. It's not a sign of rebellion, it's a sign of recognition, and recognition is exactly what makes it Baphomet forbidden knowledge. But here's where it gets more intriguing. The pentagram can invert. When turned upright, it's the human standing aligned with the heavens. When inverted, it becomes the shadow, the spirit turned downward, enslaved by matter. The Baphomet esoteric meaning includes both. That's why the symbol is powerful. It acknowledges not just light, but shadow too. Think about it in personal terms. When you follow your higher calling, you live the upright star. When you betray yourself for comfort or fear, you become the inverted one. The Baphomet occult secrets teach that both stars live within you, and the real battle is which one you choose daily. In practice, you can feel this geometry in your own body. Stand tall, spread your arms and legs wide, and you become the living pentagram. That posture isn't coincidence, it's an echo of universal design. Some mystics even suggest meditating in this position to channel balance between body and spirit. It may sound simple, but try it. Breathe deeply. Imagine yourself as the star inscribed on Baphomet's chest, and see how your awareness shifts. This is the Baphomet seal of power at work, not a symbol on a page, but a living geometry written into your very form. And yet, the pentagram is not static. It pulses with life, much like the heartbeat it rests over in the engraving. Isn't that curious? Levi didn't place the star on Baphomet's forehead or hands, he placed it over the heart. Why? Because the heart is the meeting point of opposites, reason and emotion, spirit and flesh. The Knights Templar Baphomet may have been accused of heresy, but perhaps what they guarded was this truth. The star is not a charm to wear, but a rhythm to embody. The Baphomet explained here is simple, yet radical. The cosmos beats within your chest. Of course, many fear this symbol because they only see the shadow. Hollywood horror films love the inverted pentagram splashed in blood, stripped of its sacred history. But symbols don't lose power just because they're misused. If anything, misuse proves their potency. The Baphomet Forbidden Knowledge warns that ignorance makes symbols dangerous. To reject the pentagram without understanding it is like throwing away medicine because you dislike the taste. The Baphomet esoteric meaning tells us that every seal can heal or harm, depending on the hands or hearts that carry it. So, the pentagram of flesh is not just a mark, it is a mirror. It shows us both our highest and lowest selves, our potential for ascension and our tendency toward downfall. And just like the torch between the horns, it burns with choice. But why would Baphomet carry this duality openly on its very chest? Why embrace the role of both sacrifice and transcendence, both sin and redemption? The answer lies in the very creature chosen to embody it, the goat, the cipher of matter and rebellion. Why a goat? Out of all creatures, why would the Eliphaz Levi Baphomet be given the head of this humble animal? The answer is layered. In ancient Israel, the scapegoat carried the sins of the community into the desert, a living vessel of sacrifice. That image echoes here, the Baphomet meaning binds the goat to guilt and release, condemnation and purification. Yet in astrology, the goat is Capricorn, the climber of mountains, symbol of persistence and ambition. The Baphomet occult symbol unites both, the creature that bears weight, but also the one who ascends, a cipher of paradox, speaking in two voices at once. For centuries, the goat has been painted as demonic, a creature of lust, chaos, and rebellion. But rebellion itself is not evil. It is a force that reshapes boundaries. The Baphomet explained through the goat's head reveals that sin and transcendence often share the same doorway. To step into forbidden knowledge is to risk condemnation, just as the scapegoat risked the desert, and yet only by carrying the burden do we find release. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge here is not about indulgence in darkness, but about walking through it. Isn't it true that the path to wisdom often runs straight through what we fear the most? Imagine yourself facing a personal burden, maybe debt, grief, or shame. Doesn't it feel like carrying sin into the wilderness? That's the scapegoat moment. But here's the hidden twist. When you bear it consciously, you transform it. The Baphomet Gnosis teaches that the goat is not just the weight of suffering, but the doorway to ascension. Every mountain conquered begins with the willingness to carry the load. That's why the Baphomet esoteric meaning tied to the goat is so radical. Your flaws are not curses, they are ladders, and climbing them may lead to a summit you never imagined possible. The goat is also a symbol of vitality and instinct. Anyone who has seen a goat climb impossible cliffs knows its tenacity. That same raw energy lives in us. But raw energy without guidance can destroy as easily as it builds. This is why the goat's head on the Baphomet occult symbol is crowned with the torch. Instinct crowned by consciousness, matter crowned by spirit. Without this balance, we either suppress instinct until it festers, or indulge it until it enslaves us. The Baphomet seal of power reminds us, instinct is not the enemy, it is the foundation to be mastered. And here's where the goat's association with sin becomes both a warning and a gift. The church demonized the goat because it represented untamed desire, the refusal to kneel. But what if rebellion is sometimes necessary? Think of Galileo challenging the heavens, or revolutionaries breaking oppressive regimes. Weren't they goats in their own time? The Knights Templar Baphomet may have embodied this truth, that every ascent requires breaking chains. The Baphomet explained in this light reveals rebellion not as damnation, but as the raw courage to climb when everyone else kneels. Still, there is danger in this path. Many seekers become intoxicated by rebellion, mistaking defiance for wisdom. That's where the goat's dual nature returns. It is both scapegoat and mountain climber, both exile and king. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge insists that true transcendence lies not in rejecting everything, but in carrying the burden consciously. Just as the scapegoat walked into the desert, we must carry our shadow into the wilderness of self. And if we climb with it, not against it, then the summit reveals itself as transformation. The goat is not monster, it is teacher. So the goat, far from being an arbitrary choice, becomes the cipher of the entire symbol. Sacrifice that leads to redemption, sin that transforms into transcendence, rebellion that births freedom. The Baphomet esoteric meaning encoded in its head is a paradox we're meant to wrestle with, not resolve too quickly. But even this cipher is incomplete without the gestures of the hands, the silent language of alchemy inscribed in Baphomet's posture, pointing both upward and downward, declaring a formula that has guided mystics for centuries: solve et coagula. If you look closely at the Eliphas Levi Baphomet, the eyes are not the only part speaking. The hands are raised in a silent lesson, one pointing up, the other down. Inscribed upon the forearms are the words solve and coagula, to dissolve and to rejoin. The Baphomet meaning here is one of alchemy, not destruction. Everything in the universe moves through cycles of breaking apart and coming together. Stars collapse and birth new suns, rivers dry and form new valleys. Even we dissolve old habits only to rebuild new selves. The Baphomet, occult symbol in these hands, is nothing less than the formula of transformation itself. Consider what it means in daily life. To solve is to let go, to break down what no longer serves. To coagula is to integrate, to reform what is useful into something stronger. Haven't you lived this? Ending a toxic relationship, only to discover the strength to create healthier bonds. Or leaving behind an old job to step into a career that finally feels like purpose. That's Baphomet explained in action. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge is not an abstract ritual. It's the very process by which human beings grow. The symbol doesn't just show hands pointing, it shows the eternal movement of life itself. The phrase also ties directly to alchemy, the secret science of turning base metals into gold. But true alchemists knew the work wasn't about metal, it was about the soul. The Baphomet Gnosis is exactly this: dissolve your impurities, then recombine what remains into purity. That's why the Baphomet esoteric meaning always feels both terrifying and hopeful. Dissolution is painful, like fire breaking down matter. But coagulation is renewal, the phoenix rising from ashes. In this sense, the gestures of Baphomet are a mirror of the inner laboratory that every seeker carries within. Think of it this way: imagine cleaning your home after years of clutter. At first, it's chaos. You pull everything out, face the dust, feel overwhelmed. That's solve. Then slowly, you choose what to keep, what to discard, and reorganize your space into harmony. That's coagula. The Baphomet occult secrets are hidden in these ordinary experiences. By watching the hands of Baphomet, we're reminded that breakdown is not failure, it's preparation. Integration is not static, it's dynamic creation. And this is exactly why the Baphomet seal of power has endured. It describes a process that every soul, knowingly or not, lives through. Of course, not everyone interprets the gesture this way. To some, the hands of the Knights Templar Baphomet were proof of blasphemy, the goat idol mimicking Christ's blessing. But the resemblance is deliberate. It's a reminder that truth is not owned by one tradition. The Baphomet explained through these hands shows continuity. Spiritual wisdom transcends labels. Whether in alchemy, Christianity, or Eastern mysticism, the message is the same: break, purify, rejoin. What makes it dangerous is that it empowers the individual. No priest, no king, no authority can dissolve or coagulate your soul for you. Yet here's the paradox. Dissolution without integration is ruin, and integration without dissolution is stagnation. That's why both hands are present. Too much solve and you fall apart, never finding ground. Too much coagula and you become rigid, unable to evolve. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge is the art of holding both, like fire in one hand and water in the other. It's balance on a knife's edge. The Baphomet esoteric meaning is a living warning. Seek equilibrium, or your transformation turns into collapse. And collapse, without wisdom, is harder to rebuild. So these hands, simple in appearance, carry a profound message. They don't command, they illustrate. They show us that the path of Gnosis is not about blind devotion, but conscious transformation. The Baphomet occult symbols speak silently, yet louder than sermons, dissolve to renew, coagulate to rise. But the question remains, why would such wisdom need to be hidden? Why would symbols carrying healing and integration be locked away, guarded by secret orders across centuries? That mystery brings us face to face with the next veil of the enigma, the forbidden seal itself. For centuries, whispers of a Baphomet seal of power circulated in hidden circles. While the masses feared the goat-headed figure as heresy, initiates of secret lodges treated it as a key. The Baphomet meaning here was not decoration, it was initiation. To carry the seal was to step into a current of transformation, one that could not be spoken of openly. The Baphomet occult symbol served as a map of the unseen, a code that separated the profane from the prepared. And because of that, it had to remain hidden, guarded by those willing to pay the price of secrecy. Think of how power always attracts fear. The Inquisition feared that if the Knights Templar Baphomet seal spread, it could spark rebellion, not with swords, but with knowledge. So the symbol went underground, slipping into alchemical texts, resurfacing in Freemasonic rites, echoing through Rosicrucian manifestos. The Baphomet explained within those orders was far different from the caricature shouted by pulpits. It wasn't devil worship, it was Gnosis encoded in geometry, gesture, and image. But to the outside world, hiding it as heresy was safer than admitting that spiritual power had other sources than the church. Every lodge that preserved the seal gave it new layers of meaning. In some, it represented balance between nature and spirit. In others, it marked the threshold of initiation, a sign that the seeker had faced shadow and survived. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge was not just in what the symbol showed. It was in what it demanded. No one could claim it without inner work, without breaking down illusions. The Baphomet Gnosis whispered through the seal, "Truth is not given, it is earned." And those unwilling to do the work would see only a monster where a mirror stood. You can even see how this secret survived in architecture and art. Gothic cathedrals carved gargoyles that bore uncanny resemblance to the Eliphaz Levi Baphomet, blending sacred and grotesque in one body. Alchemical manuscripts slipped the goat into margins, disguising it as metaphor. Even tarot cards carried echoes of the seal in the devil and the star. The Baphomet esoteric meaning slipped into culture like ink spreading through water, visible to the trained, invisible to the rest. Isn't it fascinating how a symbol banned by one authority became the hidden backbone of another? But why hide it at all? Because knowledge, especially dangerous knowledge, is always filtered. Imagine giving nuclear power to a child. It's not just dangerous, it's catastrophic. The same was true for the Baphomet occult secrets. In the wrong hands, they became corruption. In the right hands, they became liberation. That's why orders guarded it with oaths, rituals, and veils of silence. They weren't only protecting themselves, they were protecting seekers from themselves. To misuse the Baphomet seal of power wasn't just error, it was spiritual implosion. And yet, secrecy always has consequences. When something is hidden too long, it gathers shadows. Conspiracies grow, myths twist, fear multiplies. That's why even today, the Baphomet explained is tangled in extremes, either dismissed as nonsense or worshipped as absolute truth. The reality is more subtle. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge has always walked a razor's edge. To approach it carelessly is to invite madness. To approach it humbly is to unlock vision. And so the lodges kept the seal, not to hoard it, but to test those who would dare approach. Still, one haunting question remains. What happens when someone actually opens that seal, not just in symbol, but in spirit? The image of Baphomet doesn't merely guide, it devours, reshapes, consumes. The Baphomet esoteric meaning suggests that initiation is never safe, never neutral, which leads us to the most dangerous lesson of all, the price of Gnosis, the toll that every seeker must eventually pay when they dare to touch forbidden fire. Every symbol carries a cost, and none more so than the Baphomet occult symbol. To contemplate it is to invite a confrontation with yourself. Many have sought the Baphomet seal of power, hoping for shortcuts to wisdom, wealth, or dominion. But the seal is no talisman of easy miracles. The Baphomet meaning whispers an unsettling truth. Gnosis is not neutral. It either liberates or it destroys. Those who dare to gaze into its depths must be ready to meet their shadow, and shadows, when ignored, always exact a toll. Consider the history of mystics who reached too far. Some were illuminated, others descended into madness. Isn't that the paradox of Baphomet forbidden knowledge? It reveals both light and abyss at once. One seeker may leave an encounter radiant with clarity, while another collapses under the weight of visions they cannot integrate. The Baphomet explained here becomes painfully real. Knowledge is fire, and the unprepared burn. Gnosis has never been a comfortable teacher. It is relentless, peeling away illusions until only truth or emptiness remains. Think of it like climbing a mountain. The higher you ascend, the thinner the air becomes. Those who haven't trained will suffocate where others breathe freely. That's the Baphomet Gnosis in practice. It offers vistas of breathtaking beauty, but the climb tests every weakness. Many seekers want the summit without the preparation, and so the mountain devours them. In the same way, the Baphomet esoteric meaning demands discipline, meditation, study, inner work. Without them, the symbol overwhelms instead of uplifts. The price of Gnosis is not paid in gold, it's paid in sweat, humility, and sacrifice. I once heard a story of an alchemist who meditated daily on the image of the Eliphas Levi Baphomet. At first, he felt enlightened, his dreams vivid, his insights sharp. But as months passed, he began to unravel. The symbol showed him parts of himself he wasn't ready to face. Old traumas surfaced, obsessions deepened. Finally, he abandoned the practice, calling it a curse. But was it? Or was it that he opened a door without preparing the room inside? The Baphomet occult secrets don't destroy, they expose. And exposure, if faced without courage, feels like annihilation. In modern life, the same risk exists. Someone might stumble onto the symbol online, treat it as rebellion, wear it as fashion, or tattoo it without understanding. But symbols are alive. The Baphomet explained as a meme on the internet is harmless until the subconscious starts listening. Dreams change, thoughts shift, instincts stir. The Knights Templar Baphomet may have been hidden for centuries because those who touched it without grounding risked being consumed by what they awakened. And once stirred, the psyche does not easily return to sleep. Yet here's the paradox again. The danger is also the gift. Facing the fire of Gnosis can leave scars, but scars are signs of survival. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge doesn't promise safety. It promises transformation. To be devoured by the symbol is to shed what was false. What remains is either ashes or diamond, and the seeker must decide if they are willing to endure that purification. Isn't that the ultimate test of initiation? To walk through fire, knowing it may burn away everything familiar. So, the price of Gnosis is not something you pay once. It is a continuous toll, demanded each time you step deeper into the mystery. Some refuse and turn back, others continue and emerge changed. The Baphomet esoteric meaning is clear. The seeker is never the same again, and as the symbol devours illusions, what remains is raw, undeniable truth. But if Baphomet consumes and transforms, then what role does it play in our collective psyche today? How does this forbidden seal still echo in modern culture, art, and spirit? That final layer takes us to the last veil. Even today, centuries after trials, engravings, and whispered initiations, the image of Baphomet refuses to fade. It surfaces in art, in music, in tattoos, in protests. The Baphomet meaning has shifted through time, but its presence is undeniable. Why does this figure still haunt us? Because the Baphomet occult symbol isn't locked in the past. It reflects timeless truths. The modern psyche recognizes in Baphomet both rebellion and integration. It is the archetype of the outsider, the scapegoat, the visionary. In every era, humanity projects its hidden struggles onto this figure, making it a mirror of its own contradictions. Look at popular culture. Musicians flash the pentagram, films invoke the goat-headed idol, and critics cry satanic with fear or fascination. Yet few truly grasp the Baphomet explained by Eliphas Levi. What they borrow is shock value. What they miss is depth. Still, the Baphomet forbidden knowledge works silently. A teenager who wears the symbol may think it's rebellion, but perhaps subconsciously they're drawn to its call for integration. The Baphomet esoteric meaning still whispers beneath the noise. You are not one thing, you are many, and your wholeness lies in embracing that. Psychologists, too, have glimpsed this. Jung spoke of the shadow, of the union of opposites, of the need to integrate what society represses. Isn't that what the Baphomet Gnosis reveals? The goat, the torch, the pentagram, all reminders that true power lies not in denial, but in synthesis. The Baphomet seal of power echoes today in the language of therapy, self-help, even wellness culture. Whenever someone speaks of becoming whole, they unknowingly echo the wisdom encoded in the Knights Templar Baphomet centuries ago. The symbol lives, not just in books, but in the human search for balance. But the echo is double-edged. In some hands, the Baphomet occult secrets are reduced to conspiracy theories, painted as proof of dark cabals ruling the world. In others, it becomes a banner of liberation, adopted by groups demanding freedom of thought, speech, and identity. Both extremes miss the heart of the matter. The Eliphas Levi Baphomet wasn't about worship or control. It was about unveiling a truth too uncomfortable for institutions, that each person carries within them both shadow and light. That truth still terrifies, which is why the symbol remains controversial. Think of your own encounters with symbols. Perhaps you've worn a cross, a star, a talisman, and felt it connect you to something greater. That's what makes the Baphomet explained in modern culture so potent. Whether mocked, feared, or embraced, it never leaves people indifferent, and indifference is the true death of a symbol. The Baphomet forbidden knowledge ensures this can never happen. Once seen, the goat-headed figure lingers, demanding response, repulsion, curiosity, reflection. In that sense, it achieves its purpose, to awaken the psyche, to provoke the soul into movement. What's more, the Baphomet esoteric meaning keeps resurfacing in times of crisis. Whenever society faces division between science and faith, tradition and progress, body and spirit, the figure returns, not as an idol, but as a question. The Baphomet Gnosis is not about answers. It's about forcing us to confront contradictions. And maybe that's why it won't die, because as long as humans struggle with duality, they'll need a mirror that reflects it back at them. That mirror still wears the horns, the wings, and the flame. So Baphomet, far from being buried in medieval trials or 19th century engravings, walks among us still. It is carved into music, whispered in secret orders, argued over in politics, painted on walls. The Baphomet occult symbol doesn't just belong to history, it belongs to the human condition. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is this: the symbol never had power of its own. The power was always in those who dared to face it. But if the echo still lingers, if the seal still resonates, then maybe the real mystery is not the image itself, but the courage of those who try to decipher it. So, after walking through the hidden layers of Baphomet's forbidden Gnosis, let me ask you, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you let it stay as just another fascinating story, or will you dare to look at your own life as the true seal of power? The Baphomet occult secrets aren't locked in dusty books. They're alive in every choice you make. Think about it. What illusions in your life are you ready to dissolve? And what new self are you ready to create? Are you brave enough to carry both your shadow and your light without running from either? Or will you keep repeating the patterns that chains of fear have built for centuries? The symbol is just a mirror. What it shows depends entirely on you. And here's the real challenge. If the Templars, mystics, and seekers before you risked everything for this Gnosis, what excuse do you have to ignore it today? Maybe your chains aren't in dungeons, but in your habits, beliefs, or fears. Isn't it time to break them? Now I want to hear from you. What part of Baphomet's seal spoke the loudest to you? Was it the torch of fire, the pentagram of flesh, or the hands pointing toward transformation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might awaken someone else watching this. And if you felt the weight of this message, don't let it vanish into the noise. Subscribe to the channel right now and hit the notification bell, because we're only scratching the surface. The journey doesn't end here, it only deepens. Together, we'll keep unlocking the forbidden knowledge that has been hidden in plain sight for centuries.